Hey, Kevin here, Mr. DIY Dork from DIYDork.com, and today I'm going to show you how I transform this boring, ugly mirror to a really awesome mirror. So check this out. Alright, so I wanted to show you some close-up details of the mirror so you can get a better idea of what's going on here, and why I chose this one. First of all, it's got this piece of trim up top that's probably a good 2.5 inches wide and it's about 2 inches thick. So it's a nice, substantial, curved piece up here with some routing on it and that type of thing. It also has this three-dimensional sort of floral design plastered right up top there, and it has a carved out sort of sunflower shape and some fluting and a piece of trim here. And it also at the bottom, it has kind of a footing. And the reason I had that footing is this mirror actually come off of a dresser. And I'm sure it was almost as big as the dresser, because when I measured this thing, it's a monster. It's from the floor all the way up to the top center is about 47 inches. And then from corner to corner is about 45 inches. So this thing is actually about double the size of the mirrors I've normally messed with. Usually you find them and they're about 20 inches wide, about half this width, and about 35, 36 inches tall, which happens to be from the floor all the way up to right where the mirror meets the wood. So this is actually a really big, nice mirror. Oh, it also has beveled edge. You can probably tell right there, the mirror is actually beveled. So this is a really nice piece. The only flaw I found with it, and you can barely even tell, is right there is a crack, which is really not a big deal, especially the way that we're going to refinish it. The biggest problem I have with it is just so ugly. The color is just your standard run-of-the-mill stained oak. Looks like every other mirror out there. And it is nice and it's substantial and it's real wood, and it, that makes it nice, but it's just so ugly that, I mean, most people don't want this. Maybe if they, just needed a mirror and they had absolutely, no desire in the world for it to look good at all, they just needed a mirror, then hey, it's fine. But most people want something decent looking. So we're going to turn this thing into a really awesome mirror. And it's got all the right details for what we're about to do. So anyway, stick around and I'll show you exactly how we're going to transform it. Okay, so the very first thing to do to prep your mirror is to actually tape off the actual glass, so that way it doesn't get paint splatter all over it or get scratched up or whatever. So what I did was I took some green, painter's tape, a few inches wide. This one's not quite 2 inches, probably 1.5 inches, but 1.5 inches, 2 inches would work good. And I went around the whole perimeter of the frame, and I actually shoved it underneath the wood just a little bit, so that way when we're painting, if it happens to leak underneath there, it shouldn't get on the mirror where you can actually see it. You probably will get a little bit, and we can use a scraper later to get that off. But for the most part, if you can get it under there in that little gap, it'll help a lot. It'll be a lot easier to clean up later. Then I just took some brown, butcher paper, masking paper, whatever you want to call it, and I just cut it to size. And I cut it just a little bit shorter so that you can still see some of that green tape underneath. And then I'm just using regular masking tape to hold it down. And that way it'll hold tight. The green tape will hold to the mirror just fine, and it'll be easy to peel off later. But if you try to use it to hold the paper down, it might peel up later, especially when you get some wet paint on it and all that type of thing. So I like to use regular masking tape to hold the paper down onto the painter's tape, and you get a nice seal, and it doesn't usually come off or anything. So I'm gonna finish taping this, and then I'll show you how to go from there. All right, so once your mirror is taped off and it's ready to go, it's time to actually pre-sand it. So that way you can rough up the surface and give something for the primer to grip onto. You leave a little tooth so that the primer won't just peel right off. That was a problem I had with that mirror that I pulled out of the dumpster, was that I thought I could get away without actually having to sand it. So I just primed it real quick and I painted it and I distressed it, and it was looking really cool. And then when I peeled the tape, a lot of the paint and primer just peeled right off because it wasn't actually holding on to anything. So from then on, every piece I've done, I've always tried to sand it. And I'm using about an 80 to 100 grit. That's about my medium range of grit to sandpaper. That seems to work really good. It scratches it up enough without totally gouging it out, but then it's also not so light that it's, it's not rough enough for the paint to actually stick to. So I'm gonna do this whole thing. This is a pretty big mirror, and it should only take about maybe 5 to 10 minutes to sand. I'm making sure to get in all the corners, nooks and crannies. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to get it pretty good. And we'll just sand it up, and then it's time to move on to primer. And we can put it on real quick and all that kind of stuff. So we'll do that next once I finish this. But I'll go ahead and tell you, I'm gonna try something interesting with some spray painting before I move on to primer. but usually after you sand, you'd move straight to primer and you know, go from there. So let me finish this and I'll show you how to do that.